Welcome back, capital F football fans, to the O&O Sports YouTube channel. Today, we continue our season previews with none other than the Oregon Ducks. Can they go back-to-back in the Big Ten? Can they take it a step forward and win the national championship? We shall see. But first, as always, be sure to like and subscribe and let me know what you think of Oregon this year. Can they take that step? Will they fall off? Whatever it may be, let us know in the comments down below. And now let's look at Oregon's schedule this year. At home, they faced Montana State, Oklahoma State, Oregon State, Indiana, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and USC. And in the non-conference, Oklahoma State and Oregon State are both two teams who could be potential risers this year. I wouldn't count them out at all. But talking about in-conference play, Indiana and USC are two teams that I want to highlight. They both have dynamic quarterbacks who can hurt you with their arms and on the ground. Fernando Mendoza for Indiana and Jaden Mayava for USC. And Indiana and USC are both teams that could hang around in the Big Ten. I think they are both 8 to 10 win programs, but Oregon is going to be the much more talented team of those three programs. And all in all, it should be a pretty easy home slate in the Big Ten unless those teams that I mentioned before overperform and really take it to them. And as for the away slate, they have Northwestern, Penn State, Rutgers, Iowa, and Washington. And now, in my opinion, their two biggest games of the year are going to come against Penn State and Washington on the road. Penn State is one of the best teams overall on paper. They'll have a dynamic, multifaceted offense led by Andy Kotelnicki, and they are led by veteran quarterback Drew Aller, and it's going to be hard to stop that Penn State running back tandem. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen return this year, and early on, it looks like they're the favorite for the best rushing offense in the country. And at the very worst, Penn State's defense is going to be on par with Oregon's, probably even a little bit better. And to top it off, this is going to be a night game early on in the year at Beaver Stadium, probably a whiteout, which is one of the hardest environments in the country to play in. And as for Washington, Jedd Fisch's Huskies could take a major leap in year two, just like Arizona did under Jedd Fisch just a few years ago. And DeMond Williams could climb to a top 3 quarterback in the Big Ten. He looked very good in Will Rogers' absence. He threw for an 81% completion percentage, 400 yards of total offense, and 5 touchdowns in the loss to Louisville in their bowl game. And he is a true dual threat guy, can hurt you a number of ways, has borderline elite speed at the quarterback position, but he has a great pocket presence and an underrated deep ball. You have to watch out for him. They also have a deep running back room with Jonah Coleman, who had over 1,000 yards last year, 5.5 yards per carry, and 10 touchdowns. And they return an underrated receiver room. They have a very, very good wide receiver one in Boston, and they have a lot of depth in that room overall, which could be scary on the road for Oregon this year. And with that, let's look at Oregon's strengths this year. Starting with the running back room, they obviously land Tulane transfer Mekhi Hughes, over 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns at Tulane last year. One of the most explosive backs in the group of 5 overall, and pure volume could go down for Hughes, and it probably will just because of how Oregon's going to utilize their running backs this year. He still should be the RB1 in that room and serve as the number 1 overall playmaker in that aspect. But that brings us to Noah Whittington, who served as the backup behind Jordan James last year. And behind James, he had 540 yards and 6 touchdowns. He is a patient runner, solid in the open field, and can pass catch out of the backfield. And the 1-2 punch of Mekhi Hughes and Whittington should be just as good, if not more effective, than Jordan James and Whittington were last year. And next, let's take a look at the defensive line, led by Mateo Uiagalelei. He is one of the best edge rushers in the sport, period. Last season had 12.5 tackles for loss, 10.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles, and he has potential to be a 20 tackles for loss and 15 sack player this season if all goes well. As for the tackles, they will field 2 very similar players overall in Amari Washington and Bear Alexander. They're both very, very large tackles at 6'3", 310 plus pounds. Bear Alexander is going to have more experience presence on the field. At Georgia in 2023, he had 6.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, and 4 pass defenses, which is what I want to highlight when I talk about how big these guys are. They're going to be able to play a role in the pass defense. They're great at disrupting the flow of the quarterback, as well as being great run stoppers. And at Jack, they also have a very deep unit led by Tatum Tuioti. Last year, 7.5 tackles for loss and 5.5 sacks. And behind him, 2 high 4-star athletes in Blake Purchase and Ashton Porter. Those guys should serve as well as key rotational pieces. I imagine they'll see the field a good bit this year, but the starter, Tatum Tuioti, could be one of the best players in the country at that position as well. And the last strength of this video is going to be the secondary. We could have went a number of ways for the final strength, but this Oregon secondary is just so obviously elite in my opinion. They bring in transfers Dylan Thieneman, Theron Johnson, and Jaden Kennedy. Thieneman is a dynamic coverage safety who can come down and play rover as well. In 2 seasons at Purdue, he logged 140 solo tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, a sack, 6 interceptions, and 9 pass defenses. Like I said, he can hurt you in coverage, and he can come down and be a hybrid linebacker and play very excellent in the open field. As for Johnson, he's more of a boundary corner you can leave on an island, which is crucial for this defense. At Northwestern, in 2 seasons, he logged 63 solo tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, a touchdown, and 15 pass defenses. And he's also been effective as a free blitzer when he's been used that way. Like I said, great in man. Can leave him on an island with Big Ten wide receiver ones. And last in that group of guys is Kennedy. He's also a coverage safety who has mainly been utilized in the field and zone coverage, but can also play man as a drop back DB. Those 3 guys are going to make a huge impact in that secondary, as well as all of the talent that they have coming up at that position group. And that is why the secondary is our 3rd strength of the video. And as for their weaknesses, the first one is going to be a question mark, and that question mark is Dante Moore. And I personally love Moore as a passer. He wasn't given a lot of tools to work with at UCLA, but his mechanics still have been pretty good. Hard to judge when he has had virtually no help. I think him having sat behind a Heisman caliber quarterback in Dylan Gabriel will be beneficial for him. And I think overall he's still a very talented player who's had a rough start to his career. All signs point to him being capable of being a superstar player at Oregon, but it is still virtually unknown exactly how well he will perform. And our last weakness for this video, it's going to piggyback off of that Dante Moore question mark, and it's going to be the Evan Stewart injury. Evan Stewart was their lead returning wide receiver, and he is now out for the year with a knee injury, which leaves the wide receiver room with a lot of unproven talent. And I want to highlight they are still a very talented unit, but they do not return a lot of production, especially with Evan Stewart being out now. Their most productive wide receiver in that room is Florida State transfer Malik Benson, who had 300 yards and 1 touchdown last year. But there is still a huge hole to fill with the guys leaving: Trayshawn Holden, Tez Johnson, and now Evan Stewart, all gone from last season. And that's not going to help Dante Moore's case this year, but they're still going to have a lot of talent, like I said, but they definitely won't be as deep as they were last year. And with that, let's jump into this team's grades this year. On offense, I'm giving them a 92 flat, an A-. Honestly, would be higher probably without that Stewart injury. I'm personally very high on Dante Moore, but he is a complete unknown, relatively speaking. That O-line is also very talented and very deep. They portal in Isaiah World, Emmanuel Pregnon, and Alex Harkey. And overall, that unit could finish top 3 in the Big Ten. And that running back room, like we said, rivals Penn State, probably going to be one of the best rooms in the conference this year. But for the defense, I'm giving them a 95.5, an elite A grade. Uiagalelei is going to be the de facto leader of this group, and he has potential to be a Abdul Carter type of player this year. The interior D-line, like I said, is also big and full of potential, probably the most underrated part of the defense overall. And the secondary is littered with star players in Thieneman, Kennedy, and Johnson. And as for the linebackers, haven't gotten to talk about about them. Bryce Boucher is also extremely underrated. He had 50 solo tackles last year, 8 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. Wouldn't be surprised to see him on an all Big Ten first team this season. And as for these special teams, I'm giving them an 88.5, a B+. And while these specialists, James Ross and Atticus Sappington, were great in 2024, the punt and kick coverage was all around below average, which is going to bring this grade down a bit, but they could obviously improve. The unit isn't bad, but probably is just good to average overall. And as for coaching, I'm handing out another Elite A. It's a 97 for this unit. Lanning has been one of the best coaches to watch since he was hired. He's kept his core of guys together on that staff, and they've already shown steady improvement year to year. They had a top 25 defense and top 15 offense last season in terms of yards per play. And what will be crucial for them in identifying exactly how great the staff is, in my opinion, is going to be the development of Dante Moore. He reminds me a lot of how Bo Nix was coming into Oregon 2 or 3 years ago. And this is a big if, but if they manage to go 3 of 3 on Heisman caliber players from Nix, Gabriel, and now Dante Moore, I'd be willing to go out and say that Lanning and company could be considered a top 3 staff in the country. And as for the strength of schedule, I'm giving them a 94.5. They have a fairly lenient home and non-conference schedule. 2 of their 3 toughest opponents will come on the road. I think those 3 opponents will be USC, Washington, and Penn State, the latter 2 obviously on the road. And if Oregon starts out slow again, teams like Oklahoma State or Oregon State could be pretty tough opponents early on. And that brings Oregon to an overall grade of 93.5. With the losses at wide receiver and the uncertainty of Moore, it's hard to give Oregon an elite grade overall. The defense more than warrants one. I do think that is an elite unit, but the offense, not so much. I think they're a great offense. I think they'll be spearheaded by that running back room this season. And Lanning has them in a prime position to be at the top of the country annually. But are they capable of winning the Big Ten in back-to-back years? Are they capable of being one of the top teams in the country year in and year out? We will have to wait and find out. But looking at my predictions for Oregon this year, I have the floor set to 8-4. This, of course, will be a real disaster scenario. This would be if Moore doesn't pan out and the defense has a hard time stopping the elite ground games of the Big Ten. I personally think Oregon will play close to their ceiling, which I have set to 11-1. I don't think Oregon is as good of a team overall as they were last year, so I don't think they are capable of going undefeated. I think they have at least one guaranteed loss, and I think it's one of those 3 teams that I talked about earlier. But that does bring me to my final prediction for the Oregon Ducks, which is 10-2. I think they lose to both Penn State and Washington on the road. Penn State's probably going to have a better offense altogether, and a Happy Valley night game will be very tough to win in no matter what. I think Washington is a pretty fun team this year. They have a borderline elite 3-piece combo on that offense, and on top of it, it's a road game, it's a rivalry game. You're going to get the most out of the underdog in that scenario, but I still think Oregon is in prime position to make a Big Ten championship appearance, possibly once again this year. I think they're absolutely a playoff caliber team, so long as Dante Moore doesn't fall flat on his face, which I don't think he will, and so long as that offense doesn't take a massive step backward. I think they're more than capable of making a playoff push this year. And with that, thank you for watching. As always, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and let us know what you think of the Oregon Ducks in the comments down below, and we will see you in the next one.